Oh, we got a fun fantasy football today for you on a Thursday. It's the start of Week 11, and we're excited. We're presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. Speaking of legendary, we got the Hall of Famer, Dave Richard, here. We have the best in the business, Heath Cummings, here. We have everything you need to get your lineup set to help you dominate your fantasy league. So let's get started right away with the quarterbacks, because this is going to be a great week for quarterbacks, guys. I don't know about you. There's like 20 guys I feel comfortable starting. Geno Smith.
No.
Jacoby Brissett.
Maybe.
Tua Tagovailoa.
Actually,
Marcus
yeah.
Mariota. Joe Flacco.
Yes.
Aaron Rodgers.
Yes.
Jameis Winston. We got a lot of quarterbacks we could start this week. Let's show you the rankings 1 through 12. I don't think we'll see Jameis on that list, but Jameis is going to start for the Giants as long as Jackson Dart is still in the concussion protocol, which is still the case. But we are looking at some of the hopefully still top guys. You know, the Lamar Jackson's, he's going to be okay dealing with that knee injury. We got Josh Allen, who's going to hopefully bounce back from the tough loss for the Bills. But when we take a look at the list 1 through 12, we're talking about guys that hopefully will have some strong performances. And we get into some of the guys that we're a little bit concerned about how we're going to rank some of these players. And one particular player that is in the top 12, Heath, is for you, is Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I think the upside that he's shown us in about half of his games this year is very exciting and hard to bench for some of the guys you see in that QB2 range. The guys we don't normally start, the Marcus Mariotas, the Jacoby Brissetts. At the same time, he's going up against Brian Flores' defense, which on occasion can just make a quarterback look like he has no idea how to play the position. So I think that he constantly is in that hard to rank range for me, but especially this week, I've got him just at the bottom of the top 12.
I'm with you on that. One guy who's not in our consensus top 12, but I'm nervous about, yet I think he's okay. And maybe you feel the same way. Like, I feel like there's like 4 or 5 quarterbacks that you feel okay about, but you know that there's like a floor that could bottom out. Heath always talks about a fantasy floor. It's Sam Darnold going up against the Rams. Now, they only have 1 sack in their last 2 games, so their pass rush pressure rate, it's gone down over the last 2 weeks. It's against Tyler Shuck and Mac Jones. So that lends some optimism. If he ends up having to throw, I could see Sam Darnold having an okay day, but I don't know if he can be better than most of the guys on this list right here, Jamie. Caleb Williams, I'm definitely starting ahead of him. Joe Flacco, I'm definitely starting ahead of him. Aaron Rodgers, I'm starting ahead of him. But Baker Mayfield's a question mark. Tua's not on this list, but I've got to decide between Tua and Sam Darnold in one of my leagues, and my head is spinning right now.
I go Tua. I'm concerned about Darnold. He has 9 games on the season. 5 of them he's been under 20 fantasy points, so he's been playing great. The fantasy production hasn't always been there. You mentioned the pressure rate for the Rams.
Yeah.
I mean, he's turned the ball over 6 times in the last 3 weeks, even while playing well. And so now we're talking about a Rams defense that, for the most part, has been good against opposing quarterbacks. There have been 3 times this season where a quarterback has gone over 20 fantasy points. Mac Jones did it twice. But I still think you're looking at Darnold as not someone that's going to crack this list, probably better suited for the next list. So somebody you're starting in 2 QB leagues and super flex formats. For me, the guy that I'm struggling with is Jordan Love, because the matchup's as good as you can get. You know, Giants have obviously been terrible against opposing quarterbacks. But he's just not been playing great right now. Now, we did get good news that Romeo Doubs is going to play. We'll find out if Matthew Golden's going to play as well. But I think just losing Tucker Kraft and coming off a loss and Matt LaFleur getting a lot of questions, easiest thing to sort of solve this problem for them is Josh Jacobs, and more Josh Jacobs, and sort of just say, okay, here, we can win with our defense, we can win with our run game. Maybe Jordan Love doesn't do very much, so he's somebody that I'm concerned about, which is why I think we all have him outside of the top 12. But you see some of the names on this list. You got Jared Goff in a tough matchup against the Eagles. Bo Nix obviously has been struggling, taking on a good Chiefs defense coming off a bye. So some of the names that you're used to seeing, just not going to be must-start quarterbacks for us. I don't know if you want to run to the waiver wire to replace them with a Tua Tagovailoa or Marcus Mariota, but those guys are in good spots facing each other based on how those defenses look. All right, let's talk about some quarterbacks we're going to start and we're going to sit. So, Heath, for you, you're starting Joe Flacco. Is it just a set it and forget it at this point? Because the last 3 weeks have been great, but the last 3 weeks have been at home. One of those was against the Steelers. He was awesome, averaging over 30 fantasy points per game. Is he just that easy to start this week?
I think as long as Joe Flacco has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, he's just that easy to start. The one thing you worry about with the Steelers' defense is they've really gotten back to pressuring the quarterback well on the edges. The one thing Joe Flacco's done since he got to Cincinnati is get the ball out of his hand. That's easier to do when you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins running routes. They're open pretty early. Under 2.5 seconds time to throw for Joe Flacco. That's not enough time for most defenses to get pressure. He throws the ball 40 times a game. I think we'll probably see that again in this game. I worry at 10 that I've got him too low.
I've got him at 7, and it's for the exact reasons that Heath pointed out. Volume is going to be in his favor. He's got 2 excellent wide receivers. I've got questions about the secondary for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's right about the pass rush, though. Flacco's not going to be able to sit there and wait 4 seconds and then throw downfield. That's not going to be available to him. But if he's going to throw 40 times, he's going to get over 300 yards. Those receivers are going to score. So Joe Flacco's a start for me.
Obviously, I don't disagree. Just to play devil's advocate, they just faced a team, the Steelers, that has a good quarterback with some great receivers, and they held Justin Herbert in check. The week before, they held Daniel Jones in check despite throwing 50 times, turned the ball over 5 times. We know Flacco could be turnover prone. And again, his worst game, for what it's worth, 22 points, was on the road. It was his first start. Last 3 games at home, much different scenario. And you know Pittsburgh coming off a loss in their building. No trepidation at all, though. You got him clearly as...
I'm not picking them to win the game, but I'm picking Joe Flacco to do a lot in the game. And it's all about stats. You know this. So I think Flacco will get a lot of good stats.
And you like the guy on the other side of the ball in Aaron Rodgers?
I do. I'm a little bit worried about how much he's going to have to throw, but I think he can be more efficient. And he's looking for a bounce-back game, and the Steelers are looking certainly to be more balanced offensively. That does worry me a little bit. But look at the track record of quarterbacks against Cincinnati this year. 6 of the last 8 quarterbacks they faced, at least 22 fantasy points. Rodgers himself had just over 30 fantasy points in the game that they played in week number 7. He's always better when he's not pressured. This Bengals pass rush can't get to anybody. So I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be okay. Low-end, top 12 type of fantasy QB.
No Trey Hendrickson again. Shamar Stewart's not going to play also, so there's an opportunity here for him to just sit back and throw.
Like, he's going to have 4 seconds.
The only thing is, like, you heard him coming off the game last week, we got to get Jaylen Warren more involved. He said it throughout the week. They're trying to get Jaylen Warren more involved. And you wonder do they just lean into their ground game a little bit more, that it takes away from Rodgers if the other side is not putting up as much points.
I mean, I think Rodgers is in a way tied to Flacco. Because if Flacco's bad, then you could see a 22 pass attempt game from Aaron Rodgers where they just hand it off to Jaylen Warren over and over and over again. But we don't think Flacco's going to be bad. As long as Joe Flacco leads the Bengals to more than 20 points, I think Rodgers has a good day.
Should be. I mean, again, it's set up for everything based on we've already seen this once play out, and both quarterbacks did great. Hopefully Rodgers does have one of his better games. Only 3 games this season over 20 fantasy points, but as Dave alluded to, the best game so far this season was that game against the Bengals. I'm hoping for a Justin Herbert bounce back. He's my start of the week for week number 11. Last week was miserable against the Steelers, but this is one of the best matchups on the table. The Jaguars number 3 in most fantasy points allowed to opposing quarterbacks. He was great prior to this with 4 games in a row with over 22 fantasy points, so I think he gets back on track. I love that Aranda Gadsden's playing because that was a little bit of a concern. Jaguars have just been absolutely miserable against opposing tight ends. He shouldn't have to worry about pressure here at all. They've just been bleeding fantasy points to the great Davis Mills, for example. Matthew Stafford without Puka Nacua threw 5 touchdowns against them. Like, this just should be a great game for Justin Herbert. So as you see, top 5 quarterback for me, top 8 for all of us. So hopefully Justin Herbert comes through. All right, let's go to the guys that were sitting. For me, I already said I'm sitting Sam Darnold. Heath, you're going with Baker Mayfield. Let's have this Baker Mayfield discussion for the 5th time today. So tell us why you're concerned about Mayfield.
The Buffalo Bills have not allowed a quarterback to score more than 16 fantasy points against them since week 1 when they faced Lamar Jackson. They faced some really bad quarterbacks in that stretch. They've also faced Drake May and Patrick Mahomes. Baker Mayfield has not been the same guy with both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin out. Averaged 7.9 yards per attempt the first 6 weeks of the season. He was Baker Mayfield. That's about what he was last year. Just 5.6 yards per attempt in his last 3 games. I also don't think, at least the first half of this game, we're going to see a high-volume pass attack from Tampa Bay, because the way you beat this Bills defense is by running the ball. You have the 3rd most yards per carry amongst all defenses. So I think we see a lot of rush attempts, at least early. Maybe he saves your day in the 4th quarter with some garbage time. I think the Bills probably handle Tampa Bay pretty easily this week.
I'm okay with him as a low-end starter. I don't think this is going to be the typical 28-point Baker Mayfield game because of what he's talking about. And it does make sense for Tampa to at least try to attack with the ground game. And it feels like Sean Tucker would be the better option than Rachaad White just when it comes to carries, not playing overall. But I don't know if Sean Tucker can pull it off. This Bills secondary has been excellent. And their pass rush, it looks like they're getting healthy. I know the secondary was banged up last week. That's part of the reason why the Dolphins had such a good game. But really, it was their run defense that was terrible. And Devon Achane had a huge game. If the Bucs lean into that, Heath's right. You're not going to have a great opportunity for Baker Mayfield to throw a lot. But I just don't think that that's what's going to be the end result. I think Josh Allen will get back on track. You want to talk about offenses not being on track last week. That was absolutely the reason why Buffalo lost. I think they get back on track. And I think that forces Baker Mayfield to throw a lot. And even if the yards per attempt is a little below. I think he can end up having a pretty good day. I still like the receivers that he throws to, Ibuka, Tez Johnson. I think this is a Cade Otton week, too, attacking the middle of that defense. So I'm okay with Baker as a starter, but not the slam dunk must-start guy. I'd rather start both Rodgers and Flacco ahead of him.
And listen, I get it. I just look at what he's done so far this season, his body of work. Atlanta, New England, Philadelphia, Seattle, Houston. He's been good against all those teams, and in some cases on the road in their building, in the case of Houston and Seattle, and those are not easy opponents for him to have to take on. So I still trust him as a top 8 quarterback, but certainly if you think Flacco and Rodgers have more upside, obviously he thinks a lot of guys have more upside, so you can go that way with Baker Mayfield. Dave, one more guy that we're going to talk about here is Jared Goff, who's another player playing very well, has done well outdoors so far this season. The narrative not necessarily the same, but don't really love him this week again.
Some of those outdoor matchups were favorable for him. Some of those games away from Detroit were favorable for him. Now he's taking on Philadelphia, and this is an Eagles pass rush that's even more legit with Jalen Phillips coming after the quarterback. We saw that on Monday against Green Bay. I think that Lions offensive line's a little shaken up. It looks like all the starters will play, but man, are they going to have their hands full with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and now Jalen Phillips on top of that and whatever else that the Eagles have. Nolan Smith is going to get after him. This is tough for him, and when Goff is pressured, he's not good. When he's outdoors, it's not good. It's going to be cold. This isn't what the Lions are used to. I can't feel great about him, especially since Philadelphia. Under 23 fantasy points to 6 of the last 7 quarterbacks that they've gone up against. 4 of those guys have been under 19 fantasy points. I am nervous that it's going to be that kind of a game for Jared Goff, not a top 12 QB for me.
As you see, we're all on board. We don't love him as a top 12 guy. He has been a little bit better than expected, again, in these situations, and we'll see Dan Campbell calling plays. Does he have something lined up for Philadelphia, but the matchup's tough. And if you can get away from Jared Goff for Tua, for Rodgers, for Flacco, for even Marcus Mariota, might be the smart move to make. All right, we're going to take a break right now. We come back and get into some running backs, look at our rankings. Robert Turbin's going to join us. Going to find out who we should be trading for, who we should be trading away. That's next here on Fantasy Football Today. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. We're talking running backs now. Speaking of legendary, our buddy Robert Turbin joins us to talk about the position, and we're going to get right into it, Robert. We got the trade deadlines coming up in a lot of fantasy leagues. You know the running back spot better than anybody else. Who is someone that fantasy managers should be trading for that could help them hopefully put them over the top and maybe win a fantasy championship?
Great question. I think that if you're looking for somebody who's going to give you steady numbers each week, who's going to have availability each week for the rest of the season, maybe had a rough start, but it's Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry, to me, and the way that this offense is playing for the Ravens at this particular time and what you project they'll do going forward, I think will be a nice pickup for someone who is either trying to get into the playoffs or that are already in the playoffs and want to make a championship-type move. I think Derrick Henry is that person for this particular question.
I love that call. Guys, we've seen Henry obviously struggle even lately. Was good against the Dolphins 2 weeks ago, struggled last week a little bit, lost the rushing touchdown against the Vikings. Tough matchup this week against the Browns. Is now the time to go get him or maybe wait after if he has another down game against Cleveland? But I'm with Robert. When Lamar Jackson's on the field, I feel great about Derrick Henry. So hopefully that pairing stays together the rest of the season. Dave, how are you approaching Derrick Henry in trade?
Well, first and foremost, when's the trade deadline in your fantasy league? If it's after this week's games, then you could wait another week. But if it's not, and once the games kick on Sunday, the deadline passes, you need to go and get Derrick Henry ASAP. And I like the call. The Ravens look like a team that are going to contend for a playoff spot this year. And when they do that, they're going to stick to what works best for them. And what generally works best for the Ravens is a strong rushing attack and Lamar Jackson playing off of that and attacking downfield. Derrick Henry is going to be a huge part of that. Look for a lot of touchdowns from King Henry.
I think the other side of this, though, Robert, is who are you looking to get rid of? Because obviously you want to try and maybe enhance your receiving core, maybe find a quarterback, maybe try and flip somebody to get Derrick Henry. So if you're trying to trade somebody away who's either been struggling or coming off a good performance or good stretch of performance is selling high, who's the running back that you're looking to trade away?
Yeah, and just one more point on Derrick Henry. The other thing is I think you can buy low on Derrick Henry right now, which is why I think it's a good time to pick him up. As far as trading away, look, I think Kenneth Walker III is a guy that you need to trade away from your team right now. Obviously, he just hasn't had the production that you think you would be able to get, this season. The problem is you have to have a desperate manager, who really needs a running back in order to trade. I don't know how much interest you're going to be able to generate with Kenneth Walker III. And so if I had to pick another guy, it'd probably be Travis Etienne with the Jaguars. Those would be my two guys to sell right now at running back.
Heath, when you look at Etienne, because I think he's the more prominent one in terms of trying to sell high on, coming off a relatively strong game last week despite the struggles for the Jaguars. We haven't seen the Bashal Tutin impact that a lot of people thought might happen at the start of the season. Can you now maybe look to flip him, knowing that the Jaguars struggle a little bit right now, receiving core is a mess? Is now a good time to sell Travis Etienne?
I mean, if I could get Derrick Henry for Travis Etienne, I would be happy to do that. So I think some of the problem with trading away Travis Etienne is he's got a little bit of that Kyron Williams syndrome where everybody's always trying to give Travis Etienne's job to somebody else in the fantasy football community. I remember it was 6 months ago or less that people were drafting Bashal Tutin ahead of Travis Etienne. So I still think he's a good RB2. If you look at the playoff schedule, there's a lot of good games coming up. They've got Tennessee, Indianapolis, the Jets, then the Broncos maybe not good, and then the Colts again. So you got to aim for someone like Derrick Henry if you're trading away Etienne.
All right, so aim high if you're trading away Travis Etienne. Obviously try to buy low on Derrick Henry. Great trade advice there from Robert. Now we'll get into some of our rankings here, and Robert can certainly chime in, help us out with maybe some of the dilemmas that we're dealing with. So here's the rank list 1 through 12. And as we always do, we give you the players who are a little bit difficult to rank for us. I don't think anybody on this list is a little bit of a challenge yet, so we can maybe just go 1 through 12 and then show 13 through 24. So, Robert, the three names that we have here, for Dave, it's Breece Hall. For Heath, it's Woody Marks. For me, it's Kamani Vidal. Which of those names stand out to you as somebody that you think can have a great game this week in Week 11, or maybe somebody you want to avoid against Breece Hall, Woody Marks, and Kamani Vidal?
On this list, who's going to have a great game?
No. Of those three names, these are the guys that we're struggling to rank and where to put them. Breece Hall, Woody Marks, Kamani Vidal. Who stands out to you?
I think it's Woody Marks. Woody Marks is, proven that he could be a top fantasy back, when given the opportunity. He's had some ups and downs, but mostly ups this season. And so for me, it'd be Woody Marks.
So I agree with him having the most upside, especially this week of this group. Great matchup against the Titans. He was awesome against them earlier this year. The only reason I have any problem ranking Woody Marks is because this is the third time last week that he played at least half the snaps. The two prior times, he went right back to a 35-40% snap share the very next week. They've spoken outwardly about not being sure that they want to give him 15 to 20 touches per game. And so I do just worry that the Texans decide to pull back on Woody Marks a little bit, especially if they've got, the defense has some success against Tennessee, they will, and they build a big lead. Is that the guy they want to ice the game with? Or do they want to keep touches off of him and just give those to Nick Chubb when the game's at hand?
It certainly could be a concern. I'll just skip ahead when we get to it, but he's the guy that I'm going to highlight as a start this week simply because you said it's the Titans. I mean, his best game this season came against Tennessee, just played 80% of the snaps. DeMeco Ryans basically just came out and said he's not a rookie anymore. We trust him. He's going to be in a prominent role, whether that's the lead role or the dominant role throughout the course of the game. That remains to be seen. But I'll just take my chances knowing that the Titans suck and he's coming off a strong game, playing as well as he did. So I think there's huge opportunity here. Dave, just real quick about Breece Hall.
Sure.
Coming off a strong game, we know that everything is a mess for the Jets right now. Garrett Wilson's not going to play. It's a tough game tonight against the Patriots. Is he just an easy start, or is he somebody you're a little concerned about?
I'm trying to not start Breece Hall, to be completely honest with you, and I don't like having him as a top 24 running back, and that's really a byproduct of not having a lot of great running backs available to us in fantasy this week. He was one catch away from being a total dud last week and then being somebody that we would talk about avoiding this week. It just so happened that the one catch was a 40-plus yard touchdown scamper that he had. He's going to need to do something like that against the Patriots. This is a great run defense. I am very nervous about how Breece Hall will do. I like Woody Marks better. I thought Marks was outstanding last week. His pass protection, some of the reps he had were 10-year veteran good. So I believe DeMeco Ryans when he says that he's not a rookie anymore. Marks over Breece Hall for me.
Let's go now to the guys that we're looking to start. And Robert, we'll just stick with you because you got the other guy in the same game, and that's Trevion Henderson. Ramondre Stevenson not going to play with the toe injury. What do you think of Henderson the last 2 weeks without Stevenson, and how do you think he'll do tonight against the Jets?
Yeah, no, I think he's amazing. And the thing that you love about Henderson right now is that his confidence is building. I mean, we can look at the numbers and everything like that, but I can tell you guys as a former running back, when you start to taste a little bit of success and you start to feel what's going on out there in the game, both in the run game and catching the football, and then even in pass protection, just feels like all of those things are starting to come together for TreVeyon Henderson. And I think that's going to equate to a lot of success, especially against the Jets defense that is not the Jets defense that we've known over several years. And so I like TreVeyon Henderson in that matchup.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think we're all in agreement that we're expecting him to have a big game, especially, again, without Stevenson there, and probably Terrell Jennings going to sit out as well. Heath, for you, you're starting Chase Brown. I guess just, start everybody in that Bengals-Steelers game?
Start everybody in that Bengals, well, maybe not Calvin Austin, but start almost everybody in that Bengals-Steelers game. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One, the rushing average for Chase Brown has been a lot better since Joe Flacco became the quarterback. It turns out if the other team thinks you might have success throwing, it's a little bit easier to run against them. The other thing is Samaje Perine, as soon as he went out, Chase Brown went back to being a 90% snap share guy. That was really the thing that made him a must-start running back last year. He just never came off the field. We may be back to that again with Chase Brown.
Should be a lot of fun, and again, 14 targets in his last game. His only 100-yard game did come against the Steelers the first time these two teams met. So the last 3 weeks have been very good from a fantasy perspective for Chase Brown. All right, Dave, so we've talked about 2 rookies already, Woody Marks. We got TreVeyon Henderson. And
why not one more?
One more in R.J. Harvey. It's about time. Maybe he's going to come through and help fantasy managers?
I hope so. I mean, this is really about having a great opportunity. It's not the matchup you'd want him to have. He's not taking on Cincinnati or anything like that, but it's Kansas City. The Broncos don't have much of a choice. They're not going to make him their only running back, but I think he's in line for a minimum of 12 touches. We know that touchdowns have been something that have gravitated toward him over the last 4 weeks. And even though his efficiency has been in the tank, it's because he hasn't had a lot of work. I think when fantasy managers look at running backs this week, and once you get to RB20, there's going to be flaws on all of them. I think R.J. Harvey just has the opportunity, the speed, the work in the passing game to be somebody who can factor in to help Denver bring home a win against Kansas City at home. So I'll take the chance based on opportunity and talent that R.J. Harvey is a good number 2 fantasy running back.
Robert, what do you think about that situation? J.K. Dobbins almost certainly not going to play and maybe candidate for IR. So is this now R.J. Harvey's time?
100%. R.J. Harvey's got a great opportunity to really excel as the running back for the Denver Broncos moving forward.
Yeah, hopefully that's the case, as Dave said. Could be somebody else working in the mix, maybe Tyler Bidet, maybe it's Jaleel McLaughlin, but let's just give the kid all the chances he can have. 1 game this season so far with double digits in carries. It was week 4 against Cincinnati, 14 carries in that game, 19 PPR points. So the upside is definitely there, and Heath is sure you're buying into that as you have him ranked at number 14. Let's go down to the running backs that we're going to sit. And Robert, we got a lot of changes happening with the Giants. New head coach, with interim head coach at least, with Mike Kafka taking over for the fired Brian Daboll. Most likely new quarterback because Jackson Dart's in the concussion protocol. That's a plus or a minus for the running back situation there with the Giants, whether it's Tyrone Tracy or Devin Singletary.
Well, I think from a carry standpoint, it's a plus for the Giants because I think they'll lean on those 2 guys, Tracy and Singletary, to try to be productive offensively. But, we know Jameis Winston wants to throw the ball down the field, and we know that he's also susceptible to turnovers. And I think that Green Bay, their game plan is going to be to, stack the box a little bit and eliminate, some of that run game for the New York Giants and try to force Jameis Winston to put the ball in the air and try to beat them. And Green Bay on Monday night was as good a defense I've seen them play in a long time. And so, to me, Tyrone Tracy had a good week last week, but he's a sit for me this week against Green Bay.
Definition of a trap back so far in the 2 games. He had 14 carries, 71 yards, not getting a lot of work in the passing game. And the Giants, for the most part, have been allergic to the end zone unless it's Jackson Dart. So good call on Tracy there. Dave, you're sitting David Montgomery this week. So you already said you're sitting Jared Goff. Is just basically running away
I'm running away from Lions, not named Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I've got questions about Jameson Williams. Sam Laporte is a start. I would use him. But I do think that the first thing you have to ask yourself whenever you think about starting Montgomery is, can he score a touchdown? Because all of his games with 13 or more PPR points, he's scored a touchdown. So against Philadelphia, I think that's going to be tough for him to do. This isn't the type of game script that Detroit's going to be able to build a lead and run away with the game against Philadelphia. I don't think that's happening. So I'm very nervous about him finding the end zone. And when he doesn't find the end zone, he's had no more than 10.1 PPR points in a game this season. I can't start him knowing that that's part of the floor. It can get worse than 10.1 PPR points. He is at best a number 3 running back in this tough matchup.
All right, so Dave is not welcome in the city of Detroit. Heath, you're not welcome welcome in the city of Tampa. Well, Tampa. It's not Tampa Bay, but in the city of Tampa because you're anti-Bucks this week.
Anti-Bucks this week, and you would think you'd want to start the running back going up against the Buffalo Bills, who have been absolutely dreadful against the run all year long. I just don't know that Rachaad White is the back most equipped to take care of that. I think it's Sean Tucker, the better runner. Last week it was 10 carries for White, 9 for Tucker. Wouldn't be surprised in this matchup if Tucker actually had more rush attempts. White's going to need a lot of catches, and the Bills haven't been near as susceptible to pass-catching running backs as they have been to running backs running. He's a flex still this week, especially in full PPR. I would start him over Tucker in full PPR, but I don't want to start either one.
And just keep in mind, at least as of Thursday, Bucky Irving, 2 straight days of being limited in practice. There is that caveat that he could return and obviously change things around for this Bucs backfield. All right, the only way I'm going to Seattle is with Robert because I don't like Sam Darnold and I'm a little bit concerned about Ken Walker. Robert, you kind of laid this out that, Walker's been struggling. Just explain to me really quick, because week 3 he scores a touchdown. He has not scored a touchdown since. Zach Charbonnet's got 5. George Halani has a touchdown. Why are they not giving Walker touchdown opportunities, Robert?
Well, I just don't think that they trust him, inside of the red zone, for whatever reason. And it's interesting because, he's got the skill sets, but, I'd have to get into the weeds a little bit of some of the film breakdown that I've been, looking at in terms of the Seahawks. But, Kenneth Walker has become an undisciplined runner. And so, he's missing a lot of opportunities for big runs because he's just not seeing it. And he's not seeing it because he's just not doing the little things right. His track, his steps, and things of that nature, staying in between those tackles and things of that nature where he's supposed to be. And so, the Seahawks are like, look, we got better guys who can get downhill, break tackles, and be more physical in the red zone. And that's why he's not getting those opportunities.
And tough matchup this week against the Rams. They've only given up 1 touchdown to running back on the ground so far this season. It was Brian Robinson Jr. last week. But the way Walker is allergic to the end zone, can't trust him in this game. All right, Robert, we appreciate the breakdown of the running back position. Have a great call between Boise State and San Diego State. We're looking forward to seeing that. For Heath, for Dave, we're going to take a break right now on Fantasy Football Today. When we come back and get into the wide receivers that you need to look at for week number 11. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. I'm Jamey. That's Dave. That's Heath. We're taking a look at our wide receiver rankings for week number 11. Keep in mind, we got the news yesterday. Marvin Harrison Jr. not going to play, dealing with an appendicitis situation. Hopefully, it's only out for 1 week. Keep an eye on Chris Godwin. Maybe he's going to return for the Bucs. So lots of moving parts with some of these wide receivers. Darius Slayton, who's got a great opportunity in front of him with Jameis Winston starting, dealing with a hamstring injury. So if we get any updates on these players, we'll give you the latest news for you here. But let's show you the rankings 1 through 12. A lot of stars on this list. I got to be honest with you, I had a hard time with where to put Amon-Ra St. Brown because I like so many wide receivers this week. So Emeka Egbuka I like ahead of him. Jalen Waddle I like ahead of him with his matchup against Washington. St. Brown obviously is a top 10 guy, but Nico Collins, Ladd McConkey, both great matchups coming off great games. And then we got Devontae Adams. Good news is he's going to play. Rankings 13 through 24. Here's where we started to get in some of the question marks for a lot of fantasy managers. And Heath, there's one guy on this list that a lot of people asking questions about, and that's A.J. Brown, because he was on a live stream earlier this week, and he basically said, don't start me in fantasy, and he's upset once again about the situation in Philadelphia. He clarified that a little bit. He said he just wants to see their offense play better and help the defense out. So I don't think he said really anything wrong. I think it's just the context and sort of hearing the words and how he said them. Can you trust him, though? Because this has been a very frustrating fantasy wide receiver.
I think we laughed at A.J. Brown's comments and thought, well, nobody's actually going to drop him. My son came to me yesterday and said, guess what? Somebody dropped A.J. Brown in my league. I picked him up.
Wow.
Here's the thing. He's wide receiver 40 on the season. And if you watch what he's doing within the games, it's not like they're designing things for him or he's wide open and Jalen Hurts is missing him. It's understandable why he's frustrated. He's also still A.J. Brown. So just full disclosure, when I did my projections this week, he came out as wide receiver 34. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to rank him as wide receiver 34. I pushed him up into the top 24, but it's just because of the name. I don't see anything in last week's game that makes me feel encouraged that, oh no, A.J. Brown's fine. The only thing you hope is this is one of the squeakiest wheels we've ever had. Like we talk about the squeaky wheel game, He's had about 4 of them this year, but he couldn't be much squeakier than telling fantasy managers on Twitch to drop you.
I'll add another layer on it and why I'm a little more optimistic about A.J. Brown. He does better against man-to-man coverage. His target per route run rate on the season is 36.1%. That's more than double what he does against zone coverage, 17.4 yards per catch. 3 of his touchdowns come against man-to-man. Guess who plays the 4th most man-to-man coverage in the National Football League? It's the Detroit Lions. They're absolutely going to come out and try and do that against Philadelphia. That opens the door for Brown to get a few more targets from Hurts and maybe make a couple of big splash plays. So I'm a little encouraged by A.J. Brown. I would trot him out there as my wide receiver 2 this week.
I think most people will, but again, wide receiver 40, wide receiver 34 in the projections. You watch him play, it just does not look like there's a mesh between him and Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni. They're saying all the right things.
Did you say mesh or mess?
There's a mess.
It looks like a mess.
Yes, I said mess with a lisp. Terrible situation right now for A.J. Brown. Hopefully things do get right in this big game against the Lions. And another guy that you're struggling to rank is Jameson Williams.
Yeah, and it comes down to, was last week the new Jameson Williams, and that's what we should expect from here on out. And it's been 2 weeks. We've got to give him credit. He's been pretty good for fantasy for the last 2 weeks. But tough matchup for him. Obviously a tough matchup for his quarterback. Receivers have done well against Philadelphia, have usually played in the slot at least 25% of the time. So they get that advantage of working in the slot and getting away from Quinyon Mitchell on the outside. He doesn't do that. Jameson Williams doesn't typically do that. He usually plays out wide. One game this year where he's been in the slot more than 25% of the snaps. So that worries me a little bit. And just the fact that if he's going to get more targets, that's cool. I'll take it. But it's not going to be downfield stuff anymore. He's okay. He's on that border between number 2 and number 3 wide receiver. He's on the right side of it for me, too. He's a top 24 wide receiver. But I had a hard time ranking him because I can't just fully buy into, all right, he's absolutely now the new number 1 guy for Detroit. Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to take a back seat. Laporta's going to take a back seat. It's not going to work that way in Motown. Those guys are all going to take turns being the number 1 guy. This week, I think it's St. Brown with Laporta being the number 2, Jameson Williams being more the number 3, but he's got upside to still be good.
And Dan Campbell calling plays is obviously something that could benefit him, hopefully moving forward, but not the easiest of matchups. So in full disclosure, I send the list out to I send a blank sheet out to the guys. I usually fill it out first just to make it easy. I just, every week in this spot, Chargers wide receiver. So this time for me, it's Quentin Johnston. Last week, I went and looked. Last one we did this, it was Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
It's just who's the Chargers receiver that we're going to struggle to rank. And for me, Quentin Johnston. Good thing is Aronde Gadsden's going to play. Last week, though, we saw Johnston with 10 targets. The matchup against Jacksonville is absolutely fantastic. They are just bleeding fantasy points to wide receivers. In the 7 touchdowns to wide receivers in their past 4 games. 5 guys scoring at least 12 PPR points over that span. It's just an easy situation to buy into Johnston. However, Ladd McConkey, fine. Gadsden, now that he's good, fine. And then it's a matter of, will this be a Johnston week, or will they maybe go back to Keenan, or maybe just avoid both? I don't know, but I like Justin Herbert, so I'm going to like Quentin Johnston. All right, let's talk about some starts and sits at the wide receiver spot here. Dave, I'll start with you. Interesting one that you chose here, Troy Franklin.
I think he's the number 1 receiver in Denver, Jamie. I mean, the numbers bear it out, and certainly when you watch him play, he's more explosive than Courtland Sutton. He's not as physical as Courtland Sutton, but he's getting open and he's getting targets more than Courtland Sutton. He's the team leader in targets by 7, team leader in catches by 1 over Sutton, 8 or more targets in each of his past 4 games, 4 touchdowns in his past 4 games. 3 of them have been in the red zone. Sutton has 4 touchdowns all season long, and this is a matchup where I think Denver's going to have to throw. I think his versatility lends itself to being a good option for the Broncos. I think Troy Franklin has arrived. He is a number 2 wide receiver for me.
I do like Franklin better than Sutton. Sutton, when we show it, it'll be the wide receiver that I'm going to sit this week, so I don't really get much into it.
Okay.
I just don't really want to trust either one, to be honest with you, just because Bo Nix and how he's struggling against the Chiefs defense coming off their bye week. So I would try and get away from them unless we're talking 3 receiver leagues. But I agree with you. I do think Franklin should get the credit for being the better of the Broncos wide receivers heading into this week. Heath, for you, you want to start DK Metcalf. Now, he has not been good, right. And for what it's worth, the Bengals have actually been good against opposing number 1 wide receivers, including Metcalf a couple weeks ago.
They've definitely been better against wide receivers than anything else. They've also been awful against everything. We're starting Aaron Rodgers. I think if we're starting Aaron Rodgers, you start DK Metcalf in a game where the Steelers have an implied total of 27.5. There's going to be a lot of offense in this game, and it's not quite the A.J. Brown situation, but it's similar. It's just a talented player in a situation where we expect a lot of points to be scored. Ignore the last couple of weeks, put him in your starting lineup.
Hopefully he comes through. I mean, again, it just feels as if we're starting him by default, but you said it, the Bengals defense at some point should start to give up production to wide receivers, and maybe that'll be the case. For me, I'm going to start Jawan Jennings. Really, it's about the matchup. He did not play in the first game against them in Week 3. Ricky Pearsall did 8 catches, 117 yards on 11 targets. We'll see if Pearsall's able to come back. But Jennings in the last 2 games, at least 14.1 PPR points in both those games. And Arizona, at least 12.4 PPR points to a wide receiver in every single game this season. 11 receivers have hit that mark, so their secondary struggling. I think Jennings will be the go-to guy, especially if Brock Purdy does start for the 49ers. Some guys that we're going to sit. Heath, you're sitting Tez Johnson. Dave, you're sitting Jordan Addison. Let's talk about those 2 guys quickly. Johnson is just your narrative again. Hate everybody from Tampa.
It's part of the hate everybody from Tampa, but it's also that he has 1 game this season with more than 4 catches. He has 0 games this season with more than 60 yards. He's scored 4 touchdowns in the last 4 games. So that's the reason that he's produced like a starter. If you think Baker's going to have a big day, start Tez. If not, don't.
I'll start Tez over Jordan Addison. He has yet to score even 10 PPR points in either of the 2 games with J.J. McCarthy. Jalen Naylor looks like he's on the same page with McCarthy. Addison does not.
Do you feel, though, just based on how bad the Bears secondary could be, last week we saw the targets because we actually saw J.J. McCarthy throw the ball more than 30 times. If the targets
he
are there,
needed to. They were playing from behind. I think this game will be closer. And I think the Vikings go back to a slower pace.
Just in a broad spectrum of this, if the targets are there for Addison, would you? If I told you right now he's getting 8+ targets, would you start him?
I'd start him with the idea that he could come through with more than 10 PPR points. So that would put him in the flex category. And maybe that's where he should end up being this week after all, but not a top 24
Yeah,
guy.
it makes some sense. Again, he's just not been connecting with McCarthy. Small sample size, but not necessarily somebody you have to trust fully. All right, we're going to take a break right now. We come back and get into the tight ends. Tell you about a position that actually is delivering for fantasy managers. That's next year on FFT. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. The tight ends have been making it legendary for the majority of the season, and just like we always say, it's going to be the year of the tight ends, and actually are delivering in 2025. Let's show you the list of tight end rankings 1 through 12, and maybe some dilemmas that we have in terms of rankings. And Dave, you got both Browns tight ends on this list here, so you're a little bit worried about both Harold Fannin and David Njoku?
I'm just having a hard time ranking them. I fully expect them involved in the Cleveland offense, but figuring them out it's really tough to do week after week. Both Fannin and Njoku, more than just short check-down targets for the Browns. Check-down targets, I said. 4 games when Gabriel has thrown 30-plus times. Fannin has seen 7 targets 3 times, 10-plus PPR points 3 times. Njoku has seen only 5 or more targets 3 times, but he's scored 3 times. So is he the red zone option and Fannin the guy that works between the 20? Are they going to be guys that are going to get a lot of targets from game to game? I can't help but think that they're going to get a lot of targets this week, too. So Fannin, a low-end number 1 tight end. Njoku, a high-end number 2. That's how I've placed it.
And just keep an eye on Fannin with the hamstring injury. Heath will tell you why he likes him a little bit more in a second. For me, what's on this list, Kyle Pitts is somebody that I'm struggling with because the last 2 weeks have been pretty bad for him. You know, you look at what he was doing prior to that, but in his last 2 games against New England and the Colts, 12 targets, 6 catches for 76 yards. He has not scored a touchdown since week 4, so it's been tough to necessarily buy into him fully. You're clearly still starting him based on the potential, but maybe that potential is going in the way of just, Drake London, a little bit of Tyler Algier stealing those short yardage touchdowns, and obviously Bijan Robinson working in the passing game. So Kyle Pitts the last 2 weeks, not exactly been great. He did have a okay game against Carolina in week 3, 4 catches, 39 yards on 6 targets, but just not the slam dunk for me that he used to be, that he usually is, so he's outside the top 12. Heath, I like the guy that you're struggling with, and Theo Johnson. Could be awesome with Jameis Winston.
Yeah, I mean, really great. At least double-digit fantasy points in 6 of 8 games with Jackson Dart. So that's awesome. Then you get a quarterback change. And it's Jameis, who's probably going to throw a bunch, hopefully to his own team occasionally. But we don't know how he's going to distribute those targets between Wan'Dale Robinson, Theo Johnson, even Daniel Bellinger, and then Darius Slayton if he's healthy. And then the other thing is it's the Packers. Like, part of the reason that Theo Johnson scored double-digit fantasy points in 6 of 8 games is that he scored a touchdown in 4 of those 8 games. How many touchdowns are the Giants going to score in this game?
Well, they'll score 2 from Jameis going that way, 2 going the other way. They won't get any running production. I like Theo Johnson, especially Darius Slayton still dealing with that hamstring injury. That could really be a plus for him. All right, some guys that we're starting. So you want to just continue with the Harold Fannin love?
Yep, we always continue with the Harold Fannin love. It was a disappointing week last week. A couple of the targets that he got were at his feet, and he doesn't have hands on his feet, so he couldn't catch them. But he did see a 21% target share. And we saw for the second week in a row that David Njoku had a route participation below 60%. It looks, based on what we've seen in their last 2 games together, like the Browns have gone with the future. Harold Fannon's the tight end 1. David Njoku's the tight end 2. Njoku might score the touchdown. We hope not. But Fannon is the starting tight end on this team and in your fantasy team.
Makes me less nervous to go with Harold Fannon after hearing that.
Dalton Schultz is somebody you're excited about.
Well, he's averaged almost 14 PPR points over his last 4 games, only 1 stinker in that stretch, and now he's taking on Tennessee, and the Titans, they're really not great defensively against anything, and that includes tight ends. They've been okay against tight ends, but I still think Schultz is a good check-down guy for Davis Mills. We saw that connection come alive in the second half last week. I don't mind him this week as one of those tight ends that could get you 5 for 50.
You're supposed to say, I don't like Dalton Schultz this week because the last time we hyped him up, he was bad. So just
Dalton Schultz is going to be awful. Yep. Don't even use him. Look somewhere else. But start him.
Yes, I agree. I would also start K. Dotton. We're going against conventional thinking here because the Bills #1 in terms of fewest fantasy points, 2 tight ends. As you see, top 6 for all of us. Yeah. He's just been awesome. 10.1 PPR points or more in 4 of his last 5 games, coming off an absolutely dominant performance with 9 catches for 82 yards on 12 targets. I don't even think you should even just forget. Don't even look at the matchup. Don't look what it says opposing fantasy points allowed to the position. He's great. You start him. All right, some guys that we're going to sit. We already talked about Kyle Pitts as someone we're nervous about. Heath Colston-Loveland, playing well lately, but you don't want to start him this week.
I think he's awesome. I wish the Bears thought he was as awesome as I do. I'd love to see Colston-Loveland and Luther Burden both get 20% target shares. They've been their 2 best pass catchers so far this year in terms of efficiency on a per-target basis. But we saw it. Cole Kmet came back, 4 targets for Colston-Loveland. I don't think Cole Kmet actually should matter at all, but it sure seems like when Cole Kmet's active and available, Colston-Loveland doesn't get as many targets. I really hope I'm wrong. I hope he comes out and he has an 8-target game and we can just view him as a must-start tight end the rest of the year. But the evidence we have so far suggests that you don't start him when Cole Kmet's active.
It is a great matchup, though. They have allowed a touchdown. The Vikings, 5 touchdowns to tight ends in their last 5 games. So hopefully he does find the end zone. In that same game, I'm going to sit T.J. Hawkinson. Look, it's just been very tough for him in the 4 games that J.J. McCarthy's played. The targets have been bad. 4 targets or less in each of those games. He did have a touchdown. He's yet to top 10 PPR points in any of the starts with McCarthy. Even though the Bears matchup is favorable, stay away from T.J. Hawkinson. All right, we're going to take a break right now. We come back and get into your questions. Continue to send them to us using the hashtag AskFFT. You find us, we'll find you. Stay right here, and we'll answer them next on Fantasy Football Today. Wrapping things up here on Fantasy Football Today with your questions. Thank you for sending them to us using the hashtag AskFFT. Here we go. Best stash player to roster for Week 11 in PPR. Luther Burden, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Brian Robinson Jr., or Blake Corum. Heath, you've been talking about Luther Burden all week. Is he the best candidate on this list?
It's him or Corum. Those are the 2 guys that I'd be excited about. Corum with an injury, it's pretty clear. I'm going to say Burden.
Brian Robinson with an injury would be pretty clear too, but I agree with you because I think there's a better chance of Burden getting an opportunity without injury than Blake Corum getting an opportunity without injury.
I think it just depends on what you're looking at because if you get those running back injuries, you're talking about league winners in both those cases. I don't know if Burden ever gets to being a league winner, but yes, if you're going to talk about immediate success, I think that's Burden. All right, next question. Dak or May this week? Dave, who do you like better?
I like Dak better, and I know his last 2 games have not been great for fantasy managers. Neither of Drake May. May's been better than Dak over the last 2 weeks, but it's not like he's had huge numbers. Dak against that Raiders secondary, I can't wait to see what they do.
Drake May is my QB1 this week. I'll put the Jets' current secondary up against the Raiders secondary.
That's true. That's a fair point.
I hate when you have these dilemmas because they're both going to be great. I would lean toward Dak, but I like them both. All right, next question. Marks or Breece Hall? Heath, you've been the Breece Hall guy. You're going with him over Marks?
I'm going to stick with Breece Hall. One point I would make about what Dave said about Breece earlier in the show. Like, that play that he made is what Breece Hall does. That's what Breece Hall's done throughout most of his career. I want that guy in my lineup.
Hopefully he makes 1 or 2 of those plays. I would rather I loved what I saw with Marks. I'd rather start Marks.
I would go with Marks as well. We got time for one more. Here we go. Trade Sutton for J-Mo, PPR, yes or no?
Yes.
I would not.
You would not. So you go Sutton, you go J-Mo. I probably go J-Mo as well, just with the hope that Dan Campbell has unlocked him, and maybe we get the best of Jameson Williams like we saw last year for the rest of the season. Thank you for watching Fantasy Football Today. Make sure you check out our Fantasy Football Today podcast. Wherever podcasts are found, we're helping you dominate your fantasy leagues. For Robert Turbin, for Heath Cummings, for Dave Richard, and our wonderful production staff, I'm Jamey Eisenberg. Thank you for watching Fantasy Football Today.